All right, there we go. Hey, everyone. Welcome to Mella's Diner. Thank you guys so much for being here. Christ is risen.
Truly
is risen.
Amen. So joining me today, we have Daniel Sansky, the Trotskyite. He's our artist here. We have another artist here, Punchy. She's actually making her YouTube debut right here on my channel, so points for me, I guess. We've got Mano. Everyone knows Mano. We got Christina, and last but not least, we have the resident. He actually lives here on this channel, the real John Connor. So hi
I'm the
everyone.
waiter. Since this is Mel's Diner, I am the waiter, and so if you
Yes,
talk
he's
smack
the
about us, I will spit in your food. So
we never do that. But yeah, you guys might still be wondering, what this is. I don't know. We're just gonna find out, and hopefully, we'll get into some good conversation. I really don't mind where the conversation goes, but I do have some topics to serve up, to bring to the table, to keep things fresh, to keep things rolling. So it should be fun. This episode will be a special art episode, so we will get deep into some art. But yeah, before we get into all of that, I just want to thank POST FIDEM for that fire track that he made. Like, it was such a perfect blend of everything I wanted in an opening track for this show. And yeah, that guy is really the real deal. So go check out his music, POST FIDEM music. Yeah, I can't say enough good things about that guy. Like, he's really talented. Also, thank you to Daniel for that really clever menu for the show. I think it was Nub Ross. He was like, so are we supposed to eat them? Like, yeah, kind of. I guess, yeah, we're going to be consuming you guys through the show. So, yeah, I guess that's how it's going to go. But yeah, before, let's just get started by making the rounds. Let's do a little introduction. So feel free to take a few minutes for yourself. And also tell us how your Holy Week and Pascha celebration was. Anyone want to get started? Mano, let's start with you.
Okay, sure. Well, Pascha was pretty awesome and interesting, all wrapped in one. Because we started off in Texas, Holy Week. We were in Texas at our parish at St. Maximus, the Confessor, and then we ended up in Canada. So it was like a triple culture shock from Mexico to Texas to Canada. But it was wonderful to see family and spend a lot of time with family, eating meat, drinking, going to a lot of church services. It's probably the most church I've done in a short period of time in my life. So that was awesome. And about myself, Mano, I do the study of stuff, SOS Radio, Bored No More, stuff you guys already all know. So yeah, that's who I am.
Awesome. Thank you, Mano. How about you, Christina?
Yeah, so I'm Christina from Orthodox Family Life. I have a YouTube channel where I try to talk about Orthodox things from a woman's point of view for women and for families and parents in particular. Holy Week and Pascha are different every year, so this was no exception. I was posting a lot of things on my channel for other people for Holy Week, some hymns and things for people that couldn't make it to church, and I had to make a decision about halfway through that stop and get ready, like start preparing myself, so you can kind of get, even if it's good things, you can kind of get too distracted with other things and not be in the moment of Holy Week. So that's something that stuck out for me. But it was a wonderful week, and we have our feast day this Friday, so we are still in prepare and festive mode and visitor mode. So yeah, so it's great to be here. I am highly unqualified for this panel. I just want to say that going in. So that I'm happy to be here.
Not true at all, Christina. Thank you. How about you, Punchy? Are you muted again? Is there any way to tell if she's muted?
No, she's not muted, so it might be her. Are you using Bluetooth for your microphones with your headset? Oh,
it was working just a second ago.
Yeah. Maybe go into your audio settings, that little gear on the bottom that says settings, go into audio and see where your microphone's going in. No, I can't hear.
If you want to hop out and hop back in, maybe that will help. Okay, let's go to Daniel.
Okay, hi, I'm Daniel. I'm a graphic designer, illustrator, painter, and aspiring iconographer. I'm out here in Western North Carolina, and I had a beautiful Holy Week, most special time of the year.
Amazing. And how about you, John?
Well, anybody who knows this channel, I guess, was probably heard me before, and so it was beautiful here in Maddie calls this place Southern Canada, so it was really nice. It was a great Holy Week. It was a great Pascha. It's always very profound to actually go through the whole cycle of the services, or at least as much as you can. I was actually able to get off work for Holy Thursday and Holy Friday, and then also Monday, so I could take some time off and recover and get some sleep. And so it was special, but it's always special. I was talking about that with my priest. It's like, it's always the most important day we make is Pascha. And so, and I think I saw someone say that in a video at some point. It's like, that's what we pray for. We just pray to make it to another Pascha, really, every year. And, it's always, no matter what, it's always special. There were some, new catechumens and stuff this year. They were able to have I was able to see them have their first Pascha, and that's always, I think, really special. Not only when, not just our own first ones, but when you get to experience that with someone else, it's always really beautiful. And so glory to God for that. And it was great. So, I mean, what's there to complain about,
Yeah, that's a really beautiful way to see it too, that you get to relive the first Pascha with these new people, with these newcomers.
yeah.
So that's really cool. We lost Punchy again.
Yeah, I could hear her this time.
You could?
I think so. I heard her computer rattle.
Dang. Well, hopefully she comes back. But yeah, let's just go ahead and get into the first question that I have. Shout out to OBG, Orthodox Boomer Grandma. It was maybe a year ago in some chat. It might have been Basler Analyzer or Jamie Hanshaw's chat. But I mentioned that something was synchro, right? Something was a synchronicity, and she was like I refrain from using that term because it's like a new age term. I think actually Carl Jung, he wrote a lot about it, and he kind of put forth this this definition, like it's just like some kind of meaningful relationship between two things that happen at once, but they don't really have like a causal relationship at all. You just have you just put some kind of meaning into it. And she said the reason why I don't use that term is because it doesn't properly glorify God for his providential hand, But when I say synchro, that's definitely what I mean. But I'm just wondering, do you think there's a danger in seeing God's hand in things that his will may not really be there? Could you be a little schizo about it and see synchronicities everywhere? Because I certainly do. I certainly do. Sometimes I even have moments where I have a psychic moment, like someone will just randomly pop into my mind, and then a day later they'll reach out to me. So I'm just wondering what you guys think about that. Is there a danger in seeing synchronicities where they're not? What do you think?
Well, that's a very good question. Actually, it's great starting question, Mel. Actually, that's really good. I mean, to put it simply, it's like I think we have to always acknowledge that it's like God is responsible for everything, right? Like it's all of this is everything is providential in some sense. Maybe not everything, but you know what I mean. It's like you always have to assume God's providence has some part to play in everything. But I guess the real thing with a schizo sort of like the schizo view of synchronicities is everything has to do with me. And I think that's kind of the dangerous part. And that's where you kind of enter into that territory. Is all this has to do with me personally. It's all sort of focusing on the self and not just there's providence in that, whatever that thing is. I don't know if anyone else would agree with that or not, but I guess that's how I would say it. So, because I think we should probably recognize that, God's hand guides everything, or at the very least, he allows stuff to happen,
Absolutely, he does. He allows things to happen.
Do you want us to just jump in on that?
Anyone can jump in. Yeah.
I'll go at this for a second. That was a big part of why I stayed in the New Age for so long. Was one of the concepts of consciousness that attracted me the most was synchronicity, and it was Carl Jung who coined the term synchronicity and wrote heavily on the subject from an occult perspective and from a hermetic perspective in particular. And so it's basically the way I see synchronicity and the way it's used amongst the occult. I avoid it as well. I don't use the term anymore. I'll say stuff like God's providence with synergy involved, a participation, and it's exactly what John was saying there. That they redefine the term of God's providence so that it's self-worshiping, so that you're the one that believes you're creating things. So the way synchronicity is described in modern days is it's very much attached to what they're saying. Like they use the catchphrase now, manifesting. So they use synchronicity in relation to manifestation, meaning that you create. So basically, like one way that was explained was, what's the difference between a miracle and a synchronicity? And they would say time is the difference. They would say time is the difference. So a miracle is an instant synchronicity that occurs just right now. And a synchronicity is something that's a little bit like further in time. So you can't see the immediate request. So for me, I avoid it because of the background I have, and knowing where the term comes from and what is intended by the term.
That's a really good answer. Yeah, because I mean, I just looked into a little bit of what Carl Jung meant by it. And there does seem to be baked into his definition that there's some kind of like, yeah, like, you know, like the self-focus, and kind of what John was saying too. There's this focus on the self and your will and what you want to see on the world. And I think there is a great danger in that. Absolutely.
That was Jung's. That was his goal was to find. I mean, that was the main archetype that he sort of wrote about was the self. It was literally called the self. Yeah. That was like sort of the deepest part of the. When you look at like the maps that he drew of like what the unconscious looks like and stuff, there was always that little part in the middle that like everyone was trying to. That was the whole goal, was to like to have that manifest in your actual conscious life, essentially. You know, mm-hmm. And what that is really is, it's literally to say, I mean, that's the closest thing I think in some sense he acknowledged to, at least directly acknowledged to God. It's been a long time. It's been a very long time since I actually read through his stuff. So I don't know, like I could be talking at my butt right now, but like I said, that's the closest he came to acknowledge God. But it was really just, it was his way of like making a metaphysical statement about how you are a God, or, you know, whatever. It's definitely, it's very twisted. You don't realize that at the time, I guess, when you're into that stuff, but.
Yeah, I remember listening to Jonathan Bajot. He was kind of talking about what worship is and how it's really just, I mean, if you just boil it down, like way down, it's your attention. And mm-hmm. So if you look at your life, right, and you happen to have something on your mind or in the back of your mind, or, you know, something like that, you have some kind of narrative going on, you'll notice certain things and you'll make connections between certain things. But if you were in a different like state of mind altogether, you would make completely other different connections. So I don't know if you recall hearing Jonathan Pajot talking about that.
I have also, it's something that's common in the New Age to look at it that way. So basically, like the whole thing with Punchy's back.
Just let her know if she's here and if we can hear her. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no problem. I didn't even notice. Is her mic on?
I'm so sorry, guys. I'm having trouble with all of my own setup over here.
I'm sorry, but we can hear you.
Oh, great.
Do you want to give your introduction now?
What was the introduction again?
Who are you and how was your Pascha?
Oh, okay. I'm Punchy. That's it. My Pascha was actually really great. I got to spend it in Savannah, Georgia at a Greek parish. It was my first time there. So I'm back out on the road on the RV again. So I get to go out a bit and explore and see the different parishes, hopefully see another monastery, and just kind of find out what I'm seeking.
Amazing. I saw the pictures on your Instagram. It's really beautiful. That's such a cool cool thing that you get to do there. And I just saw, I didn't know this before, but I just saw that you're an artist. So you're perfect for this episode, and your art is really beautiful.
Thank you. My husband keeps getting on me to stop hiding in the dark and start putting things out. I'm very bad at that. I like to hide a lot. You can see right now my face is not on the screen.
We noticed.
Well, it's the tech gremlins, fault. So yeah. So I was just asking about synchronicity. Sorry, I was just sick like 2 days ago. I was really sick, and then I got better yesterday. So that's why my voice isn't really there. But
Oh, I was just sick last week. I just had the most painful head cold. I'm over it now.
yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, but just to jump back into the topic, do you have anything to say about this, Daniel or Christina?
I have a
Do you
little
ever
bit.
notice synchronicities in your life? Do you think they're like little miracles, or what do you think of this?
Yeah. Well, the only thing that I'd have to, excuse me, to add is that coming from my kind of like nihilistic and atheist background, I didn't think anything had meaning and everything was random and everything was chaotic. So to pick up from what John Connor was saying, like, it's the opposite. It's everything's providential and designed and organized by God. The only thing that I would add is that, like, where I guess there may be a little bit of danger is in your self-interpretation of what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that would be the only thing that I think that I could add on to what Mano and John said about it. It's just that, like, you kind of have to have a little bit of discernment in order to be able to understand what's going on. If that makes any sense. Hopefully it does.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, and I appreciate what John and Mano said, because this is not something I'm real familiar with, but I think just listening to them, they're 100% correct in that, in Orthodoxy, we're not supposed to be self-centered. We're supposed to be God-centered. So attributing everything to God, and we also want to be careful with God allows everything, but he doesn't, will evil things to happen, but he allows them, but he transforms them, like the story of Joseph that we celebrated on Holy Monday, one of my very favorites. Often his icon says, this is Joseph the patriarch in the Old Testament, the son of Jacob. The icon often says on the scroll, you meant it for evil, but God meant it for good.
Mm-hmm.
And so, God does not will the evil, but even the evil he can transform, like his crucifixion, So I think that's really important. And I guess, should we use that term that you mentioned, synchronicity, if it's confusing for people? And I'd say no. If it has all those connotations, we have our own terms and we should be using those. And, words like philotimo and other words of the church that are beautiful and have so much meaning, let's speak those words to the world.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I'm gonna start switching, because I don't know, it's just fun to say synchro, but yeah, it's probably better to say providence or providential. So yeah, that's a really good point, Christina. We do have our own terms.
Can I just add
Go ahead,
a small little thing to another thing about synchronicities, because I spent a little bit too much time in that world. Also, it's viewed as a form of tarot, or a form of witchcraft in that sense. First of all, Carl Jung wrote a lot of books on Hermeticism, the occult, symbolism. So like his actual library is full of this stuff, and Gnosticism and all that. And parts of how they look at synchronicity, they would look at it as a form of tarot card reading, where you kind of read what your events are and how they happen to you, and then you start to interpret them and start looking for meanings. It doesn't mean that those events aren't synchronistic in the sense that they're providential, to what Christina just said. I really like that. That's a good way of seeing it. God will create these scenarios. It's how you interpret them. And of course, the satanic version will be, oh, you created this through the powers that be. So that's how you manifest things. So manifestation and synchronicity in the occult are actually intertwined. They're not often talked about that way, but that's how they are intertwined. It's tarot card reading. He also wrote a book on tarot card reading.
Oh, did he? I didn't see that.
Yeah.
Well, this is something that John and I kind of talked about a few times, is that, God doesn't speak to us like, he doesn't like talk to us with words. In fact, he's silent most of the time. But I was, when you do see things lining up in your life, you might say that that's God is telling you something. God is showing you a way. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess Daniel made a good point. He's like, you just have to use discernment, right? You have to have that discernment. You have to stay in your prayer life to keep up with that. But I just thought that perhaps these little providential connections are God's way of talking to you. But I don't know. Maybe that's my wishful thinking.
Can I respond to that maybe?
Yeah, of course.
Father Stephen Freeman years ago put out a really amazing podcast series about the one-story universe. So if you haven't heard this metaphor before, it's incredible, and there's a book about it too. But he basically says most of the world thinks of the architecture of the world as being 3 stories. You have the ground level, you've got the attic and the basement, and you live on the ground floor. And the questions that we ask ourselves is there somebody up in the attic? Are we going to go down to the basement one day? You know, these are the way we look at it. But in reality, when you look at the church, it's a one-story universe. We're all on the same story together. And therefore, the miraculous, I think, is actually very common. You know, the monks in a monastery will see their founder, who died over 1,000 years ago, and see him regularly. So we do it, like Daniel said, we do want to have discernment and be careful. However, the miraculous is very common in the Orthodox faith.
Yeah.
And we're all in the same story together, those departed and those alive.
It's a very good point.
Very good point. Thank you, Christina. Well, this next question is kind of in the same vein. I think Daniel already guessed what it is, but so there was a stream that Matt from Kingfield did like a year ago. This was right before he started his Astrolabe show, and he and Cooper did he did like 2 streams on sacred geometry, and he was talking about, basically his argument was that as Orthodox Christians, we need to redeem this stuff. We need to redeem this knowledge because, Christ has the power to redeem. He was trying to say that this knowledge or this information is not inherently evil. And as Orthodox Christians, we should be able to look at this stuff and see how profound it is because it's actually God's hand, in creation. So I was wondering what you guys think about that. What do you guys think about sacred geometry? What do you think about acknowledging it, appreciating it as Orthodox Christians? Christina, looks like you want to
Sorry, as the ignorant person that only learned from Donald Duck on this one, can you guys just explain what that question meant for me?
I could kind of explain sacred geometry in a little bit. So sacred geometry would be like the mathematical formula for creation. And so the golden ratio is the description of that. And it's 1/1.618. Like that's the ratio. And so that ratio is found all throughout creation, and it's how things grow. So like if you have your hand, like your 1 digit to your finger, that's the ratio. Your finger to your palm is the ratio. Your palm to your forearm is the ratio. And it just fractally repeats everywhere in everything. So like, if your head, the ratio would go to your eyes. If you cut off your head at your eyes, it would be where your nose would be. If you cut out your nose, it would be your mouth is. If you're standing up, your belly button would be like right at that ratio. And so that's like something that within art history has been used in order to compose paintings and use that. So that's kind of, that's a good visual example of that.
But sacred geometry is designed using those ratios, phi, pi, and the golden mean to create objects like the flower of life. If you recall that book that I held up, that one stream with all the circles within a circle, and from in there you can get a whole bunch of different sacred geometry. So even like a cube in 3 dimensions would be a sacred geometric pattern, especially if you spin it and it'll create circles amongst circles and all of that stuff. So, but it does derive from these mathematical equations. I'm just going to turn on my light. I'll be right back.
Did that make sense at all, Christina?
Yeah, it does, and I've heard of. I guess what is the connection between that and the pagan stuff you guys are talking about, the hermeticals? I'm
So
not getting
some
the
people
connection.
use it.
There's
Yeah,
a
good.
whole sorry, Dan. There's a whole so Christina, there's like a bunch of like beliefs about this particular subject that basically, and man, it's been a long time since this is really
Well, like
crap.
the Freemasons
This
are
is like
the keepers of this information, like to this day. Okay, and other occult.
and there's a lot of other schools of like
yeah, exactly.
yeah, there's a lot of other schools of Gnostic thought that kind of are completely obsessed with this stuff and have a bunch of like writings on it, spiritual laws about it, that sort of stuff, and they incorporate those things into their symbolism essentially. And so it's like, because I guess there is like there's a natural ratio about phi. Like I guess if you look at and that's the thing is that I think maybe we should even like parse those two things out. There's a difference between being like, oh yeah, like there's the naturally occurring number pi, and there's a naturally occurring number phi. I think is that what it is, Mano and Danny? It was phi,
ratio,
right? Yeah.
That's
What's
ratio,
three?
yeah.
It's the 5/3 one, right? That's the Fibonacci number, 5/3, basically, right? Yeah. So
1.618.
Right. Yeah. So there's a difference between like, okay, that's just a number that exists, and being like, well, everything is connected to this number, and like if you put this number into a calculator, it's gonna cause a explosion, and there's nuclear atoms are gonna split open, all this other stuff.
Well,
Because people don't.
you're making it sound very silly, but there's some pretty profound,
No, there are.
I'm just saying, people. I'm
there.
just saying that I am making it sound a little silly, but like there are people. That's like a real sentiment that people have, though. I'm just saying that like it is like it's not far off from reality.
Well, so like where I would take that is that I think it comes down to the justification for math and the language of math. So if you don't have an understanding of God being the like great designer, creator, architect, you're going to attribute those patterns you see in reality to different causes. And so everyone has a different interpretation. And so you'll have a lot of occult or Gnostic understanding of what this is because they don't have the understanding of Christ and God and how he works in the universe. Does that make sense?
Yep. I agree with that. And that's my take, because that was a big part of the background I had. Drunvalo Melchizedek was a key guy, and even he had King Pill was showing Randall Carlson and individuals like that who are also connected to Drunvalo Melchizedek and a bunch of the others. So I would agree that it's not satanic or whatever. Either way you look at it, it's how you interpret it. It's kind of like we're made in the likeness and image of God. So all things around us in the universe are an image of likeness in God. So if you're going to use math to like explain rationale of like God, which you could and should through phi and all of these things, which is why it's prevalent anywhere you look. If you have an understanding of the Orthodox perspective on Christ, as we do, we'll understand that as God's language to some degree, and we won't attribute it to some sort of other bizarre thing. So like the synchronicity thing that we just talked about earlier, you could look at synchronicity as God's providence, which is what we all do, or you could look at it as some sort of like you conjuring up, you're manifesting this or manifesting that, right? So it's like the perspective on you look at it. So sacred geometry would equally be so. So it's neither good nor bad. It's just how you look at it and how you interpret it. So like if you look at a cat's face, it's obviously going to follow those. If you're a guitar player and you're playing on a guitar, the only reason the guitar works is because you have the phi ratio. It wouldn't work otherwise. So a lot of these things, even like when you get into like frequencies and all that, you have all these like new agers attributing all these bizarre theories to these things. But the reality is that, yeah, our universe is made up of frequencies, but it doesn't have to be some sort of woo-woo, weird, bizarre, occultist sort of thing.
Man, correct me if I'm wrong here, Mano, but like, and well, everyone, correct me if I'm wrong here, but like, it's always felt like that sort of, especially looking back, right? It always feels like people are using this as an excuse to plot out their life, basically, and they're using it as like they're looking for like a key to like figure out like to either what they're going to do with their life or how to make their life happen the way that they want it to. And this is just the way that they happen to use it. And I think that's sort of the thing about the sacred geometry stuff, is that there's so much of that language and ideas of like, this is how you sort of craft your own existence that's baked into the cake with this. Maybe not with all of the stuff, but with a lot of that other stuff, like you were talking about, like Randall Carlson stuff and all those other guys, like they have like sort of like a they treat it like, you know, it's almost like, oh, it's like you just have to punch the right numbers in and then you'll get the result you want. You know, like life is a calculator basically, or like life is a computer program or something like that.
It's a misinterpretation that leads to idolatry. So there's a misunderstanding of what it is, and then they make the creation the thing that they're worshiping rather than the creator of that thing. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, Daniel. I totally agree with that. Yeah.
Me too. Yeah, well
Just
put. That was
making an idol out of this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, that's perfect.
You guys remember the like there was a piece in so when in the survival course, right? You guys have all, I'm guessing, read the survival course or like listened to the survival course, right? I'm guessing, yeah. Okay. By Father Seraphim Rose.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there was a part where, and they were talking about, he was talking about the Middle Ages, and Father Seraphim said that at a certain point, all the popes actually, all of the different popes actually, you know, were had a birth chart, had an astrology chart, and all of their decisions were based off of their chart, basically. After a certain point, yeah. So it's like it kind of feels the sacred geometry stuff always kind of felt the same way to me. It's almost like an obsession with your zodiac and with your chart, basically. You know, I can only I don't know, I can only date a redhead because I have a Taurus moon or what, I don't know.
A lot of these things they do this with, right? With math, with like all the stuff that we've even already talked about. And it's just how we interpret it and interpret it properly through the church. So for example, you can easily show those proportions that you're talking about by just taking your finger, put it to the tip of your nose, to the tip of your chin, and then you scroll it this way and it'll hit your eardrum. And then you go like this, it'll hit your eye. Like it's pretty, no, not like that, like this, and then you go this way. And you could use it as a compass to measure your whole face. It's right in the middle of your eye. And if you go all the way down, it'll hit your belly button and so on and so forth. So, I mean, obviously, if we're made in the likeness and image of God, that's how we're measuring it. And the whole thing with the Vitruvian man that they call the Da Vinci man is to show those proportions. You can actually measure if you believe in a round globe planet, or if you don't. I'm not debating that one, but you could use that Vitruvian man to measure the earth in proportion and relation to the moon, and therefore the sun, and the proportions fit. So it's just like the interpretation, like you're saying, like, or someone threw in gematria in the chats, like those kinds of things. They'll take truths. It's always the great deceiver, right? He'll take truths and then he'll bend them and twist them and make them something else so that we get confused. And then we get caught up in the astrology charts of the popes.
It's
here's
really
my interpretation. Oh, sorry, Christina, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah, it's really eye-opening for me. I didn't realize people were investing so much time in these things. But you know, we're really built to worship. And so if you're not worshiping God, if you're not focusing on God, you're going to focus on something else, whether it's your passions or, you know, the day you're born or whatever. You're going to worship something.
Absolutely, yeah.
Very, very good point, actually. It's a very good point.
I like that. Yeah.
Actually, Jordan Peterson said something like that a long time before he went like really off the rails. So here's my interpretation, though. It's like, how come like everybody always talks about the Earth being flat, but no one ever talks about if it's a sphere or not a sphere, a cube. You know?
Yeah.
Could be a cube. Could be a cube.
I think it's a cube. I think it's a cube. I think Earth is a cube, personally. You know?
Could be.
I think it is. Have you ever seen it from space? I mean, like, you know.
Not personally, no.
Well, how do you know? And how do you? Yeah. Anyway, that's beyond the point.
No idea.
I digress.
Sorry, I didn't mean to bring up the flat Earth, round Earth thing. Just
We're not going to
proportions. Proportions. Yeah.
That's the next episode.
Yeah.
So here at Mella's Diner, when you go through the kitchen, there's like a back door, and you could take this like secret passageway, and there's a secret art museum. So we're gonna go there now, and We're gonna look at some art, okay?
The diner with
So
an art museum? I didn't know about that.
yeah,
I'm
it's
the
great.
waiter. I
It's
never
so
even heard about
interesting.
this. How long have you been holding this secret from me?
Oh no. So let's just look at some Orthodox iconography. Now, obviously, the depth the depth perception is not really there, and there's like a 2D thing going on. Maybe Daniel can explain why Orthodox canonical iconography looks that way.
Well, I'm not an expert, but I can do.
But you know.
Yeah. So pretty much the idea with like how we think about representing icons is a perfect blend between the realistic and the symbolic, like a good blending of that in between there. And so there's a lot of like little differences that iconographers use to express a spiritual component into the art. So one of them would be some of that, a different interpretation of perspective. And so modern art has a different approach to perspective where there's range of depth, whereas iconography sometimes can be a little bit on the flatter side. And then when it comes to perspective, there like contemporary perspective that's used in modern art is usually like a three-point perspective where, you know, things are larger in the front and they get smaller as they retract, right? And so the point of view is from those three dots that you typically put on a horizon line. The difference with orthodoxy is that in iconography, you become the vanishing point for the perspective. So the icon draws into you. So that's why when you see like boxes or rectangles, they're not what you would typically think growing up in modernity, the way the perspective would be. They have weird angles and stuff, but that's all supposed to illustrate to you being the point of where the perspective is coming from.
Absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I
Yes,
love that.
absolutely. And I think I read an article by Pajot saying the same thing. And I think you were in the chat with me, Daniel, like a year ago when Craig Trulia had this. I'm going to put it in the chat. Had this stream with Father Stefan or something like that from Montreal. They were talking about art. They were talking about, you know, Orthodox iconography, Romanesque iconography, which he was basically defending it as canonical, but yet ecumenical kind of iconography. But it was still very much, you know, in the style or theologically acceptable, basically.
Yeah.
And then around the 1200s is when things kind of changed, like in the high Middle Ages. Things started to change. And also, Father Seraphim Rose brings this up in the Orthodox Survival Course. And this is what kind of set me off this course of looking at this stuff. In this stream that I did with John, we did kind of look at Giotto. And he's called the father of European art. So he was like one of the first departures from the typical iconography. And so as you can see, like in here, there's a lot of depth and there's a lot of space. There's shadows. And what this Father Stefan was saying was that when you look at this icon, it's supposed to show the kingdom of heaven, basically, that it's imminent. And so in the kingdom of heaven, there is no sun, like there's no source of natural light. So you're not going to see any shadows.
Okay.
But in this kind of art, you see shadows everywhere. You see the depth. You see,
Can
you
I
know, that. Go ahead.
So that picture, you can see like a more of a breakaway from the iconographical idea of perspective. And so in this picture, you're seeing the perspective that's a little bit more attuned to the way that our natural eyes see.
Yes, exactly.
Spiritual eyes. And then to pick up your point on the shadows, there's a little bit more shadow play in this piece as opposed to the previous icon. In the previous icon, like, this is one little random example. Like sometimes when you see a painting or an illustration of a person's face and their eyes, they typically put like white dots like in there, right? So in iconography, you usually never see that. And especially you will never see that in Christ, because Christ is the source of light. And so to add those white dots into your pupils would illustrate that there's light coming away from Christ to Christ.
Oh,
so there's
cool.
a theological like understanding that Christ is the light, and so you're not usually seeing shadows in the kingdom of heaven, or you're not really putting an emphasis on shadow and form the way that we normally see modern art depict today.
Oh, that's cool.
And so like from the Byzantine iconography, that era, you start getting a perversion of a corruption of art through Renaissance, like Father Seraphim Rose illustrates during the Survival Course, that each art period is getting a little bit further away from the iconography tradition, which would make sense because there's a departure from God and society. And so you would expect that to reflect itself in art itself.
I have a quick question for the panel, yourself, Daniel, anyone that can answer it. Is there like a checklist for iconographers to kind of like keep in mind as they're painting the icons to kind of keep, as you said, I think the spiritual eye, I think you called it. Is there like a checklist where you're like, okay, I'm looking at it from a spiritual eye kind of thing?
It's both and in Orthodoxy, right?
Of course, yes.
So like my understanding is that there's no official canons on how an icon is supposed to be made, right? So there's no like, in one sense, there's no checklist. But in the Bible, we're supposed to maintain the traditions orally passed down and in scripture, right?
Yeah.
So there is like a oral tradition within iconography that you learn from the person you're learning iconography from. So like everything is usually based on a prototype. And so that even applies like theologically, or how you're making an art piece of artwork or an icon, where you're taking the ideas from the prototype that came before. You're not supposed to reinterpret it by yourself. There's not really an emphasis on innovation, although it does happen. There's not, there's not as much of, sorry, brain fart.
Okay.
There's not like, there's not a lot of incentive or a lot of reason to innovate, although it does happen. Whereas in modern art, it's all about innovating all the time, which is a departure from, how art used to be made.
Yeah, and just the fact that we know this guy's name is Giotto. I mean, most iconography from Orthodoxy, we don't even know the guy's name or the woman's name at all.
Good point.
Yeah, our church is being painted right now with iconography, so we can kind of come in every week and watch the steps. And they do actually have little icons taped up on the wall right next to whatever they're painting. So I think there's several, really obvious differences. Is that, as Daniel mentioned, they are trying to actually stay within the tradition and not trying to innovate, which I'll talk about in a moment, a certain situation. But also, as Daniel mentioned, they are really in a real life relationship with an experienced iconographer who is there, who is guiding them. They're slowly learning. They don't just do the whole icon, a new iconographer. They will start with, how to mix the colors or how to do the borders and, maybe the robes. And then maybe one day they move on to the hands and maybe eventually, a face. So it's a very long process. And of course, they're praying the entire time because they're trying to show a spiritual reality, not a physical reality, but a spiritual reality. And they're trying to ultimately, create something that is synergizing with the grace of God, right? Through their own prayer, through their own praxis. And so you experience that when you venerate the icon as well, right? It's all kind of meshed up together. Our church was built many years ago, and the original iconographer was a very well-known iconographer. I don't know his name, but he started to innovate. And so the dome of our church looks entirely different.
Wow.
Everybody,
yeah.
their fingers are elongated. Certain parts of their body are elongated. And I remember the first time I saw it, like maybe 15 or 20 years ago, and I just thought it was disturbing. Like you looked at the icon and something inside of you felt disturbed. Like it's not
Wow.
right. It's off. There's something not right there.
Uh-huh.
And, the sisters, I think, use that as a model of this is why you don't go off on your own. You follow the tradition. The tradition is given and you accept it. You don't innovate.
Yeah.
And you can see it in the iconography. And he's a very talented iconographer, whoever he is. But, this is a reminder that if you go your own way, it's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you guys remember, there was like a controversy about these icons that were coming out from monastery icons. And everyone was putting out the word, like, don't buy these icons. And, I was just an inquirer at the time. And I was like, wow, I didn't even know that was a thing, that you should be careful of certain icons. And I forget what the thing was. Like, they were not truly Christian. They were not even Orthodox. They were like Hindu or something like that. But that's what kind of set me off on this quasi-paranoia about what icons to venerate. And that's why I find this stuff so fascinating, how things kind of, took a turn from canonical iconography. So this is actually a side-by-side. So we have Giotto, who Father Seraphim Rose said that was like the first departure, and then Giotto was like the 180 guy. So there's Giotto, and before him, so between Giotto and Duccio was Cimabue, something like that. I forget what the pronunciation is, but you can see the difference here. And what strikes me is that the size of Mary, the size of the Theotokos, she's not even like a big lady or anything. She's like a big human,
Yeah.
She's like Nephilim size.
Yeah.
Like, what's the deal with this? It's like, and I've seen other, I don't even want to call them icons. They're just like Christian images where Christ is so small and the Theotokos is so huge. And I think in that stream that I just posted the link for, Craig Trulia stream, they were saying like this is just reflective of the whole. It's the diminishing of the divinity of Christ and the enlargement of the Immaculate Conception idea of the Theotokos, and so it's just another reflection of where things took a turn, right, in the West.
Yeah, it's a breakdown of theology.
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. So that's Giotto. Actually, I don't know if you guys want to talk about Giotto anymore, but I do want to just show something. Let me just find something real quick.
Can I ask a quick question while you're looking that up, Mella?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Have you guys run across the AI generated icons? I brought this up somewhere and I find them extremely disturbing.
Yeah.
If you go on Etsy, you can look up Orthodox coffee mugs and all these coffee mugs will come up and they're AI generated icons. And you can tell because the icon of John the Baptist looks like Fabio. First of all, he's all, long hair and very sensual, but he also has, the elements of Christ. So they clearly, someone clearly didn't know what they were doing, AI, but it's also very intricate. And I'm really concerned that people, especially people new to the church, don't realize that these are not real icons. And a real icon is a real thing that I think, is present somewhere. You can, every single icon, you can go somewhere and you can see it and you can venerate it. It's not only online. And of course, it's made by a real person in prayer and who is in a theological and prayerful, tradition.
Yeah.
So that's my PSA. I really don't like that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not good. And it's because like I said before, there's not necessarily canons for iconography. So there's not a whole bunch of online, quote unquote, information an AI system can draw from in order to know what to accurately do in an icon. Because usually those kinds of things are either passed down orally or they're written in a different language that perhaps AI can't understand. And so obviously,
sense.
to your point, Christina, like an icon needs to be made from a human. End of story.
Do we even need to say that? It's really crazy that that has to be said, right?
Well, if
Yeah.
someone doesn't know, if someone's new, they
Mhm.
may not know that, right? So it's probably good to mention it for someone in that position.
Yeah, this is part of the reason why I stopped scrolling on Instagram, because I keep seeing these AI icons and I hate it, so I don't want to see them anymore. So
That picture that you have, sorry, that one that's in the middle, that one is actually modeled after Athena, the Greek goddess, in the Parthenon. So this is disturbing to me.
this is disturbing. Yeah, this is Giotto. This is in a church, or in a church in Assisi. Okay, so he's the guy who painted the life of Saint Francis of Assisi. He's like one of the first. And on the bottom of these frescoes, or whatever you call them, these murals, he has the virtues and the vices, and they're painted as if they are stone statues, and they're all personifications of the virtues and the vices. And I'm just like, this is absolutely pagan. And this is Catholic. This is Roman Catholic.
Can I make a point on that?
Yes.
So like all of art history, from ancient art up into the Byzantine era, is kind of like a hill or a mountain, right? Where it's like, you have your cave paintings, and then, you start getting a little bit more artistically sophisticated through the paganism, and then finally it reaches the zenith at iconography. And what happened is, after like the Byzantine era, instead of, we're taught as a kid or through art history that the mountain keeps going up and up and up, but it actually ends up going back down.
Good
and
point.
So the people in the Renaissance started drawing from the more pagan traditions of art, statues and all of these things, and it starts becoming more and more pagan after the Byzantine Empire into the Renaissance, where you see like naked cherub babies that aren't biblically accurate. And then it starts getting into, one of the conversations you had with John is that it starts getting a lot more emotional, right? Like there's like a dispassion to iconography, which helps you use the icon as a tool for prayer. But when you start putting more and more emotion into it, it takes you away from that prayerful state, and it gets you more emotionally charged, whatever that emotion is depicted. And so, the way that I view art history is just kind of like that hill where you're going up the mountain till you get to iconography in the Byzantine Empire, and then it starts radically going back downhill because it's inspired and based off of pre-Christian ideas. So that's why you're getting like, Roman Catholics are looking at like Hellenistic art, Athena and that kind of stuff as the prototype for what they're creating, rather than the tradition that is coming from Orthodoxy.
Yeah, actually, absolutely. This is actually a big question I've had while I'm looking at this stuff, because a lot of these Western Christian images from the medieval to Renaissance, like it shows a lot of the suffering, and especially with Christ. Okay, and this was something interesting that Craig Trulia and that Father Stefan was saying, was that like in Orthodox iconography, there might be a little bit of pain shown, but it's very much under control. And yes, and so that's the question. Like, so Jesus did suffer, he did feel pain, but because yes, he was really like fully man, but he was also fully divine, and so he had the capability of having that under control. And that's why we don't show art of him like absolutely, completely like in pain and like just totally like ravaged with suffering, like we see in some of this Western art, which we might take a look at soon. Does anyone want to make any remarks about that before we take a quick detour to Sweden?
There is a thing about that too, where it's my godfather used to tell me about that also, because he hated he's an iconographer and he hates like depictions of like the very like kind of like in the Passion, how he actually didn't like that movie because of the depiction of like Christ suffering, how graphic it was. And really the whole point that he made is that the way he understood it is like, because the reason why we don't do that as Orthodoxy is because, like what Daniel said, but also it's just a matter of respect. It's because he was actually like unrecognizable. Like he actually, like, even though yes he was able to control it and stuff like that, it was like he was transformed in such a way that was like completely, like, he was completely not deformed by his beatings, but like he actually, like, you know, you wouldn't have been able to have recognized him. That's how bad it was. And however bad it was in those movies, it was actually 100 times worse. And so that's the other thing about it too. It's just a matter of respect. It's just like to remember that, like, it's not so much, it's like, yes, there was pain there, but it was who was going through the pain and why they were going through it was really the important part, not necessarily the fact that like this gruesome thing happened. You know, we have to remember who it was that went through that gruesome pain and why he went through that in the first place, you know?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and we focus on Christ as a willingly offering himself and being in total acceptance, and that's why you see him at peace on the cross. He's not a victim, right? He's in complete control the entire time, and so our iconography really shows that.
Absolutely, yeah. That's a good point. So let's take a quick, it's going to be quick, but I just have to do this because it's terrible.
What is that?
It's just terrible. So I showed a little bit of this in our Born No More segment. This is so-called iconography all over churches in Sweden. To this day, they're still there. And I want Daniel and Punchy to tell me, is this even good art? And it looks absolutely terrible.
I'm going to leave this for Punchy's.
A lot of this stuff, when I'm taking a look at it, just makes me want to look away from it. It just,
Yeah.
You know. I remember I was to comment on that peaceful look that the Orthodox have, where they depict Christ. He has this peaceful look on his face. I said, you know, when you look at stuff like this compared to that, this stuff just promotes like a feeling of forgetfulness and kind of like impishness. You just kind of want to like curl away and not just look at it.
Absolutely, yeah. Can you guess what this is supposed to be? I mean, it's pretty literal. It's pretty literal, isn't it?
It's
silly. Yeah, exactly.
I mean, there's like a little bit of an element with like folk art.
What is that?
Into, you know, iconography, but like this is like, not only is this not necessarily like someone who's trained to do art, but like conceptually, it feels like a kid's notebook in high school that's doing like gruesome, horrific like doodles, and then they're like, "Hey, you should paint that on the church."
Scratch on their desk.
Okay.
Yeah.
They just all look like Soy Jack too. They all have Soy Jack's face. That's like, they all look like the guy. That's who it is. The guy with the cigarette, right? You know what I'm talking about? The meme guy.
I know who you're talking about now.
Yeah, that's that's what they all look like. They all look like Soy Jack, and so, and yeah, it just sucks. I don't know how else to say it.
I'm sorry to put you guys through this, but it's just fascinating to me that this is actually in churches.
Yeah, that's creepy. I saw someone posting something about icons a couple days ago, and they were making a comment how the Jays, let's call them, the bagel people, when they're represented in Catholic art, they're depicted as like demonic looking or twisted. But in our icons in the Orthodox Church, they're just represented like human beings, and everybody's kind of represented in a similar fashion. kind of representing going back to like we're all in the fallen state. We all do stupid things. You know, we're all still made in the likeness and image of God, and I think that's kind of like pretty amazing. It's pretty awesome that's what we do.
Is this an Orthodox church?
I mean, sorry. Okay. These were done when Sweden was Catholic. Okay. So this was done by a Catholic iconographer.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, it
No.
looks like someone that
They're all Lutheran now, I think, all these churches.
Yeah.
But yeah, some of them were whitewashed, but a lot of them were preserved. So yeah, and these are like the altar pieces in these churches and stuff. So you can just see how like contorted these bodies are. I don't know. It's just crazy.
I don't understand why his neck is so long in one of those crucifixes too. That's just like, why is that? It doesn't even. This is the other thing too. It's like sometimes like there is a thing with some I like. I remember I was reading or I was seeing that like some of the stuff we reviewed Andrei Rublev. It's like there are, and my godfather told me this too. It's like sometimes there are certain like things iconographers do where it's like they might elongate the nose or elongate the ears or stuff like that. But it's just like, yeah, I don't know. That was just. I saw that crucifix with like Jesus with a long neck, and I was just like, that's just so.
Well, when they do that, there's like a theological reason for it, right? So, like, if someone has like big ears in an Orthodox icon, it's because they're good at hearing, right? Like, there's these like little theological things that connect it, you know. But like, it's not for the artist to interpret like, oh, I should make Jesus with the giraffe neck because I think that's cool.
Yeah.
Like it has no other meaning other than the artist's ego.
Yeah.
I kind of like something you were saying earlier, Daniel, about there not being like a canonical like checklist and all that, but yet there's a long line of apprenticeship, and to Christina was talking about sometimes they'll make like a hand take like 5 years, or I think it was you, I can't remember who was saying that, but I really like that because like it's not knowledge hidden in the darkness like occultism. It's out there for you, but you have to commit to the time and the discipline, and then adding the prayer to it as you're doing it. It kind of like brings your focus back on why you're doing it, and you kind of tune into that signal, because that's kind of something I've been like struggling over the last year with writing music and making music. It's not the same as painting, but it's a similar process, and I've been trying to like kind of look at it that way. So I think that point that you made about like there not being a canonical checklist, but people kind of taking that apprenticeship, I think that's kind of important. It would avoid all these mistakes, these weird whatever those things are.
Yeah.
And like one note to make on the innovation, like if we all six of us were to draw like a smiley face, right? Like your average yellow, smiley face, right? We're all going to be doing and trying, we're using all of this same prototype, right? But each one of us is going to be unique, and there's going to be something different to each of our smiley faces that we create. And so that's like where the innovation comes from, is the unique gift from the person's hand that puts themselves into the piece they're making. And it's unavoidable, and it's not, so that's like a parallel idea of innovation, right? So like, someone's going to always put their individual stamp on an icon. They're going to make choices. They're going to do things that are unique to their personality, right? And so you could probably, if I would just say that's kind of where the understanding of innovation comes from within Orthodox iconography.
I like that.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to one of the pictures you showed, Mella, because it was of the pelican, and the pelican that's actually was just painted on our church.
Awesome.
So it looks very similar actually to what was shown on the screen. And I've never seen this before, but maybe you can explain it, Daniel. But I heard it was, an image of Christ feeding himself.
Yeah, so it's so Christ sacrifices his blood for his children, right? So a mother pelican, when there's no food, will pierce its own breast or wherever to draw blood in order to feed baby pelicans if there's no food. And so that's the analogy or symbol for Christ.
Oh, cool.
We didn't have this spiritual food until Christ's incarnation. And so he's sacrificing himself for our benefit to feed us the divine blood.
Yeah, this is actually Hieronymus Bosch, and right in the center there's the pelican. Yeah, we're gonna look at some Bosch now. Have you guys looked into Hieronymus Bosch very much?
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Not
cool.
a huge amount, but I'm aware of him.
Yeah, so this was like, I think like late 1400s, 1500s. He's from the Netherlands. And John, do you want to say anything about Bosch?
Oh yeah, I used to be like obsessed with this guy's paintings and stuff, and I was like, it started out because like Jordan Peterson talked about him and I think it was like the first time he was on Rogan, he dropped him, and he used to talk about in his lectures. He would always be like, well, if you want to look at hell, you just go look at a Hieronymus Bosch painting, and then it's it's a real it's like the other side is breaking. And so I was like, oh wow, cool. So I just, it was always very captivating to me, and now in hindsight, it's like I don't know, it's disturbing, some of it, but I think some of it is still, I don't know, I guess kind of interesting to look at. But I definitely have different eyes for this stuff now than I did back then. But the thing about Bosch is that Bosch obviously lived in a time where art was in this sort of decay period from the original high standard of Byzantium down to where it was. We're talking like, several centuries removed from the schism and the loss of the loss of the tradition. But Bosch also was when he was like very young, I guess there was a rye blight in the Netherlands, and the rye bread supply or the crop for a long time was infected with the whatever that fungus is that produces
Ergot.
LSD.
Ergot,
Yeah, the ergot. Yeah, exactly. It was
LSD.
So he was basically he had like ergot disease, and he was like tripping out for basically the most of his life. And so that's always been like the explanation I've ever heard about this guy, is that he was just perma tripping and he just sort of painted what he saw. And I mean, it kind of makes sense, because this is like very especially like the depictions of hell. It's like, that's like, yeah, some demons were definitely like whispering in his ear, dude, because it's like, it's yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you, Mel. Yeah, like an ear.
He's the first surrealist artist.
What did you say, Daniel?
He's the first surrealist artist. Like
okay.
Surrealist.
Yeah.
There was
So what's interesting is people say that he was a very conservative Christian, and that these paintings were moralizing, very polemical paintings. And, usually these were in triptychs, right? But the thing that strikes me, and I'm very sorry because I wanted to show it in a different way. I wanted to show from this, just like I showed some of the Giotto stuff from a video on YouTube. It's from this channel called Learn from Masters. All of a sudden, like half of the videos just disappeared from that channel, including Hieronymus Bosch. I don't know why. So my plan to show like nice like zoom ins and stuff like that is, it's not going to work. But thankfully, I do have these slides. But yeah, he usually has these triptychs, and usually on the left side, right? Because you kind of read it that way, left to right. On the left side, let's see if I have it here. So on the left side, he usually shows like, it'll be like the fall of the rebel angels. And then you'll see Adam and Eve with Christ, right? In the Garden of Eden.
Paradise.
And then you'll see somewhere them getting banished by an angel, right? So it's kind of like that's the beginning. And then you'll see a center painting, and it'll be like, for example, this one is the Garden of Earthly Delights, which we can talk about in a second. But there's also the Haywain, which is like some kind of proverb which talks about people just taking everything they can get, like from this big mound of hay, and then the third, panel of the triptych is hell. And to me, it's like, it's saying like, this is the beginning and this is where we end up. And it's just this very pessimistic view, I feel. But the thing is, like, how can he be a conservative Christian when he's taking all this time to paint all these insane things? Father Seraphim Rose in the Orthodox Survival Course, he says that he was actually part of this Brethren of the Free Spirit, which was this heretical cult that was like a chiliastic, you know, like utopian kind of libertine cult. And the reason why I believe this more is because of this painting right here. It's the Garden of Earthly Delights. It's supposed to show a scene of, from what I understand, these are like resurrected bodies. And in this new Eden where they are, they're very innocently playing with each other. It's very sexual in nature, but apparently there's no sin in this place. And I just don't know what is the message here, you know, like maybe the message is all these people end up in hell. I don't know. I'm not really sure, but because I believe this is the third panel. But what do you guys think? Like, what do you make of this? And how can a conservative Christian take all this time to paint all these details?
The message is it's bad theology. Bad theology leads to bad fruit, and this is the fruit of it, basically. You know.
Yeah.
Also, by the way, so he, I will just say also one more thing. So, tree arm or whatever, like the guy in the middle with the plate hat on his face, that's actually Bosch's face. In the yeah, no, go to the last one, yeah. So the big like hollowed out tree person, right, with who has a face like with the long hair, that's Bosch's face apparently. That's his actual face that he used in the painting. So if you ever want to know what he looked like, apparently that's what he looked like. But this is the fruit of you know, of the fall away, basically. I think that's the only way to describe it. It's like, you know, Father Seraphim Rose talked about that actually. He talked about this. He talked about Goya as like all of a sudden you start to see like very really disturbing sort of things start to come out in art in that period, where like there's these really like graphic depictions of hell, and you see like Kronos eating his children come out of this time also, and other paintings like that are just completely ghastly, almost as if to say that like, you know, the point of no return has already passed for, you know, for this thing that they're in, you know. The point of no return has already happened for the West in some sense, and they're trapped, you know. So that's, I guess that's how I would say that. Yeah.
It also seems like to just to add to that, because that was well put. I agree with that. Is it's like unchecked thoughts, unchecked mind. It's just kind of like rolling and rumbling around in your head, and you're like, well, what does hell look like? Oh, what do these things look like? And then you kind of get lost again to the point Daniel and John made about bad theology. Of course, that'll lead you there, but it's like an unchecked mind, kind of going into an abstract place without any grounding of morals or ethics to kind of do it. Kind of like a Syd Barrett, for example, to bring a musical example. You just have someone floating off into space with no grounding of like morals, and for us obviously that would be God and the church. Good theology.
Absolutely.
That's actually a really good comparison. Like Syd Barrett and Hieronymus Bosch. That is like a,
because as soon as I saw those pictures, even when you guys were showing them on the last stream, in my head I was like associated to a musician, and I'm like, that's Syd Barrett. Like as I was looking, I'm like, that's Syd Barrett.
That's a great comp, actually. Wow. And it's weird too, because Syd Barrett's also like this stuff in you listen to Piper at the Gates of Dawn, right?
Yeah, it's the
And
only
like
Pink Floyd album I like.
Really? That's the only one you like?
Yeah, I'm not a huge Floyd fan.
Fair enough. All right. Well, it's just like because there's like mentions of like there's like satanic references in it and stuff like that, you know? And so it's like that's the thing too, is like he was, I don't know how much, I mean, I don't know. It's been a long time since I've looked into Barrett, but like, you know, he was writing references about stuff like that, and you know, then he turns into a Looney Tune. So but yeah, good comp though.
Yeah, I'm speaking from ignorance here, but to me this has no truth or beauty in it. And I think we have to be really careful about the images that we let into our soul. You know, every image that we see, everything we hear in our life stays with us and impacts us. It changes us in some way. And I'm very concerned that we have such a image-saturated society, and that there's a lot of things right now being made that to me is very similar to this. Very disturbing, no truth, no beauty. And our kids are swimming in it. And I think that's really bad for them.
Can I jump in on that?
Absolutely.
So art is a reflection of the society.
Mhm.
And so if we were to go to like the day before the last day of Earth, right? And we were to look at all of the artwork that's produced throughout history, it's one, if not the greatest sense to be able to take the cultural health of the society that it was created from. And so that's why I kind of use that hill analogy with the zenith being around Byzantium, is because if a picture is worth 1,000 words, pictures are important. They're like mini books. They're a lot more accessible. Like there's a lot of power to the image. And so to Christina's point, if you live in a society that doesn't have Christ or doesn't care about truth or doesn't care about beauty, you would expect the artwork that they produce to reflect that.
Yep.
And so all of this artwork is just reflections of the society which these people lived in. And you can tell who was closer to the truth and closer to beauty based upon what they're producing artistically. And that's why we're in such a mess right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
To make a direct comparison to two artists that are sitting here, I've just been introduced to Punchy's art recently, just with her Instagram page, and I looked at a couple things, other than a few things that she sent us for the zine, which were fantastic, like the Father Turbo thing. We're going to throw that in the next one. And Daniel's artwork, which I'm familiar with working with Daniel, both like on projects, also just looking at his art. One thing that always attracted me to both of their art, and I'm not just saying it because you guys are on here, I've said this even privately to Manny, is that I can kind of tell what your interests were in life and what kind of stuff you like and this and that. But there's something about you that's in each one of those pieces of art that I can't say it's like a copy of anything like that. And it kind of like represents your inner world. And I can almost like see in some of them when you feel more calm in your inner world, like to your point, Daniel, about like the art reflecting the society we're in, it also kind of reflects the inner world that we have inside us. Like I noticed that with myself as I've come back to Orthodoxy, trying to write music, something has changed. I don't have access to my old tools, my old paintbrushes, let's say. And I could see that in your both of your art. Like I can't track when you guys started going into down the path of Orthodoxy, but I can see in some of the things you're dropping recently that your influences from the past are there, but your inner world is kind of, you're trying to find some sort of peace in there, and you're adding elements of yourselves to the art.
Well, to connect like a couple different dots before I throw it to Punchy, there's a sincerity in it when it's coming from yourself, like an honest expression, right? And so that kind of gets to the previous point I made about everyone drawing the smiley face and how it's going to look different.
Yeah.
Some people are going to be more honest within their ability to produce that, and that you're going to see that shine through. Just like if everyone were to paint the same icon, there'd be little changes here and there that would kind of reveal the personality of the artist. Maybe Punchy would want to touch on that.
I think you're muted.
Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now I can hear you. Yeah.
I'm probably less seasoned compared to Daniel. I'm still kind of feeling like I'm still in a search mode. I'd say like right around the time when this AI stuff started kind of rolling on, that kind of shattered me and broke me down a lot, to the point that I don't even want to touch and pick up a pencil anymore. And I'm only just now grabbing that pencil and trying to find my way back up the mountain.
Well, you should. You most definitely have to.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's no one, I don't think you talk to any artist, they're going to say that they're not searching. And so some people may have different levels of a skill set, but really it's like the amount of honesty and the amount of yourself that you're putting through and what the intention of what you're creating, I think outshines, a skill level of an artist, right? Like there are really, really talented artists that can do crazy different things, but if their theology is wrong or if their heart's not in the right place, it's trash, in my opinion, you know? And so I would say, yeah, to Buck's point, just keep climbing, like keep searching for that. And it's not, you know, not to sound cliche, it's never the destination, it's the journey.
Yep.
It's the process of discovering and like working through those things, kind of like God gives us struggles, right? And it's not necessarily the point to get to the end. It's through those struggles that we end up earning, well, not earning our salvation, but we work towards our salvation.
I like that.
Hopefully I didn't just say something completely blasphemous.
I don't think so at all. I think I wrote this song that I was surprised. The one that I was talking about, BLA posted Van Morrison, and inspired me to write something. And I've never really written a super personal song, especially about a relationship, complicated relationship I have. Like that's never happened. And as I started getting better with my praxis and this and that, this like song just kind of boom. And also my songwriting style is purposely like weird. And I don't know how to explain that. And it kind of like what you're saying and to a lot of the things you're talking about there, I know it doesn't sound like it relates, but to me it does, as like someone that's writing a song. And I'm trying to look at music actually more like, so I've been actually looking at, that's why I asked you about the icons. I've actually started trying to look at writing music as making sonic icons. Not that I'm making an icon, but I'm trying to look at it like I'm making a sound icon as best as I can as a non-professional iconographer, you know what I mean? That's kind of thing.
Yeah, I want to say something about that technical skill, because that when we were at the beginning of the conversation and Daniel was explaining how iconography is kind of the pinnacle, and then we go down from there with art, a lot of people would argue with that because technically the art gets better, right? And I think what Mano just said ties into that, where I would rather hear something less technical but more authentic than something extremely technical and grotesque.
Well, the technicality is the idol, right? Like,
I agree with that. Yeah.
You know, you're making an idol out of making something super technically accurate. It's the spirit or the intention behind it. It's your own personal way to prayerfully create something to glorify God. Like that's like the zenith, right? Whether it's technically, you know, like technicality, all that kind of stuff are, you know, lower on the totem pole in terms of what, and it doesn't, even if it's music or literature or whatever, like I definitely think that the embodied spirit behind it will always be more important than the technicality. 100%. In modernity, we've inverted things to glorify the technicality of whether it's music with like different, you know, millions of different pedals and sounds or whatever. You know, like there's this idea that the innovation and the technology is the thing we're striving for, or it goes back to innovation. Like there's nothing new under the sun. It's all been done before. So like you're really innovating to feed your own ego or to, you know, stand outside. It's a prideful take, in my opinion, where like, you know, when it comes like the music analogy, right? Like there's, you know, Mano, there's like, you know, Ableton, Pro Tools, you know, all of the, what's the auto tunes, like all this technicality, right? But like you just get like 2 Byzantine monks to use their voice, which is like barely nothing. And they're able to use that in a prayerful way. Like I'd much rather listen to that than like a 128 track 9 Inch Nail song. No offense. You know what I mean? Like it just,
I still like that stuff, but yeah, good point.
I do, but it's like it's almost like the technology or the innovation can almost cover up.
I fully agree.
Skill. Like you're just adding more and more and more and more, because if you were to strip it all the way down, it wouldn't be as good as you think it should be. That makes sense.
The appeal of
I
punk
fully
rock
agree.
too, isn't it? Like that's sort of like why. I mean, I know we all have a little bit of a connection to that, but it's like that's why punk rock became a thing ultimately, because it was just stripped down to
3 chords.
Exactly, and it was saying something. People were going up there and they were trying to actually send a message that was like, for better or for worse, was something that they actually believed, and they were actually trying to seek truth with what they were doing.
It's the attitude or the theology or the spirit behind it which made it more important than their technical ability to do 12-minute guitar solos.
Exactly.
Yeah, there has to be. I fully agree. Obviously, I listen to that stuff. I avoid the complicated stuff purposely. Like even though, I just like simple tools now. Very simple. Work with what I have, but also intention is key. Like we touched upon that. But without that, you don't have a center point on which way to what direction to go. You don't have a North Star. And if your intention is self-centered, even you'll know it. You'll know it as an artist. Like I've written stuff where I knew it was self-centered, right? And it'll come off that way. And it's your intention as to why you're writing it, what you're writing about, for who you're writing it, matters on how you use either basic tools or complicated tools. Because I've heard some I don't like prog rock really, but there are some tracks where I look at it, I'm like, that's a well-written song, right? But I do prefer stripped down punk rock, Tom Waits, Johnny Cash, 2-3 chords, done. But the intention is what captures it's why prayer matters when you're doing your icon, because it kind of focuses your intention. Like, why are you doing this? I'm doing it for that, as you're praying, right? So I mean, I fully agree. Simple tools are the bomb. It's better to be innovative that way. Someone's throwing Geddy Lee in the Mano has Geddy Lee's underwear.
You don't like math rock, dude?
Not really. Not really. Not really.
You don't like quantum rock, dude?
Zeros. To me, all that stuff is like similar to looking at like Salvador Dali or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's clean, it's nice, but it doesn't really do anything for me.
And then also too, just to kind of pick up on Punchy's previous point about AI art, AI art is never going to be able to replicate the human. It doesn't have the intention. I mean, it's just not human. So in one aspect, it can be used as a tool, and there may be a time and a place and a purpose where that's appropriate. But generally, what's going to happen is a lot more people are going to use AI art out of convenience, and it's going to look horrible. And that's going to create room in the market for people, maybe with less skill than an AI program, to create something authentic and beautiful and from the heart. And I think that will always appeal and touch the soul of another person, as opposed to something as generic and as gross as AI art.
You can always tell if it's AI. Like, even no matter how good they've gotten with it, you can always, if you look at it long enough, you can always tell if it's AI, because there's just something about it that's like, the fingers, yes, the fingers. But even outside of the fingers, it's like, even if just, I don't know, man, I could tell, like, I had my computer up at work today, and like Edge or whatever it was, always have like the news, like headlines and stuff. And they have like little blurbs of like, pictures that go with the headlines. And I could tell that some of them are AI, because if I look at it long enough, like you could see the face and it's like, yeah, it's real, but it looks like it's drawn. Like there's something about it that looks like drawn or like computer generated or something like that. And so you're always going to be able to tell that. You are like you said, it's like our souls touch those things in a way that like we can't really replicate. So listen, you know what, Punchy and Danny, it's the same thing for you. It's like you guys have something that is like so incredibly valuable that really I think is actually more valuable now than it probably was before all this AI stuff happened. Because like people like will crave the real thing, and they do crave the real thing actually. And because we're going to get innovative with fakes, it's like you guys are actually probably going to be, invaluable to society in many ways. So
thanks. Well, it's, going back to the icons, it's like you're supposed to look at an icon spiritually. There's always something that's going to touch your soul. And to Christina's point about the AI icons, it's like no matter what, that's never going to be able to touch your soul. And that's important. And even if it's not an icon, that principle still applies. When a human creates something from their soul, another soul is going to be able to recognize it and see it and feel something from that, right? And when the intention is not there and it's, like an AI generated something, your soul knows that, like, okay, like to John's point, like that's not real in a sense.
Mhm.
Like I'm not getting that, like I can't look at it through my noose or through the, my soul's eyes and be able to recognize something. It's just blank and vacuous.
It reminds me of the debate we used to have back in the day when what digital versus analog, and it was very easy to explain. Analog is a real sound. If you slow down a record player, you hear an actual sound, and it's a snapshot of a sonic. It's a sonic, picture taken, and you have it. And then the ones and zeros that create digital art, your brain knows automatically it's ones and zeros, and it on a deep level knows it's not real. And I remember I used to always get into arguments with my the fiddle player, the professor in my band. He was talking about AI. He believed AI could become sentient, and I had written a song about it. And he didn't like it because I would say, like, no matter what they do, they'll never be able to replicate consciousness, and they'll never be able to synthesize consciousness on any degree. And without that, you can't create anything.
Yeah.
Yeah, Daniel, I want to ask you a follow-up question about what you just said, because you said the AI art or music will never touch, someone's soul. And I think we can assume you mean in a positive way, but do you think it can negatively affect people?
For sure. Well, and also there's like a generation of people that don't care, right?
Yeah,
like they're just gonna look at that and be like, whatever, it's kind of like, auto-tune music. Like some people were really upset because it's like, okay, you have people like Whitney Houston or Aretha Franklin that can sing, and like I really like hearing their voice, and then all of a sudden there's this like robot pop singer that's using that, right? There's going to be some people that value that, and there's going to be some people that aren't, and like there's no way to get everyone in there, if that makes any sense. Like you can't ever appeal to everyone. Like at some point, like with the AI art, to your point, it's like some people aren't going to care, and they're not going to have that connection to a soul, and they're not going to be able to appreciate the human connection involved in creating something. It's kind of like a fallout of materialism or consumerism. They're just consumers. They're not cared about the craft behind it or what it takes to create it. They just want the thing. And to that, it's like, yeah, there's going to be people that like that, and there's going to be people that think that it's good. They're just going to be wrong.
Yeah, I guess my question is not whether or not people will consume it or whether or not they will like it, but is it objectively negative for someone? Like, you can take poison. That's obviously bad for you, right? So is AI, you think? And I know we're just in speculation here and opinion.
Yeah, I guess it's how it's used, but it definitely has the potential for that. Like if someone gets like a really horrible AI icon and they spend all their time staring at it, right? Like it's going to definitely affect them on a spiritual level, whether they know it or not, and probably for the negative.
If you put one in your prayer corner, it probably would affect you in a negative way.
Yeah.
If you treat it as if it's like, if you put one in your prayer corner as if it is, as if it is an actual icon, it probably would, I think,
Or put it in your church.
Yeah.
I was seeing that there's a church in Russia where they're using an AI robot that they programmed to paint the icons on the wall.
What?
So
Send
me that.
Like a computer program, and it like prints the
Send me
icon on
that.
the wall.
Really?
Okay, yeah, I'll try to find it. Punchy, have you seen that?
Send me that.
See, I'm kind of the opinion that things are not either negative or positive. I'm sorry, that things are either negative or positive, that there's nothing neutral in our world. Either things are leading us to Christ or they're leading us away from Christ. And so that's kind of the core question I'm getting at.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with that. It in that framing, yes, it's a part of leading you away from Christ.
100%.
Because what happens is you buy one of those and you scale it up, where the more people that buy those, the less people that are making icons, painting them. And the less people that are painting the icons, the less people that are being taught the iconography tradition and all these things. And like, a little way astray leads you to, with enough time, will lead you further and further and further astray from the point.
Absolutely. And this actually brings us to this whole other discussion about, the devil using AI to his advantage. And you make a really good point, Daniel. If we're not, if there's not enough people passing on the tradition and you have AI basically taking the helm, I mean, we're going to have a whole new Christianity. And Father Seraphim Rose has wrote about this quite a bit. There's a huge danger to this. And also all the people who are, inquiring into Orthodoxy and they're seeing all these images on their feeds. I think there's a huge danger to this. So, yeah.
Yeah, so just don't get a robot to paint your icons in your church. That's like basic level.
Yeah. That's insane. Yeah, well, do you guys have any other things you guys want to talk about? I think this was a really awesome discussion. We got into some depth that I really wanted to do. I really wanted to do with you guys. I admire each and every one of you. But since you guys are here, is there anything else you guys want to say or talk about?
I feel like I talk too much.
No, you've been awesome, Daniel.
I did want to make a couple of points on some of the things you guys were talking about, if that's okay. Like I think the AI icon thing is a separate thing for me. That's an absolute no. There's nothing about that I could ever justify in any which way. So any comment I have to say after this has nothing to do with AI icons. I think that's disturbing. I saw one and it bothered me, and I've been offline for a couple of weeks, as you all probably noticed. So I haven't seen a lot of them, but I did see a couple today, and they were kind of disturbing. But like AI, it's one thing you can learn about from the music industry, because it was kind of using formulas and what later on became AI at a very early time, because it was music, it was easier to do, right? So they were using a lot of this technology, even when I was at the record label. Sorry, I recognize it now as AI, but at that time we weren't calling it that. And it was taking songs and making the songs for you. You could literally program it and say, I want this type of song and this and that. I'm talking about 15 years ago, even longer, and it would punch out the song. When I saw AI and everybody using it online and like writing songs on the spot, and they're all like funny, and they were funny, I started realizing, oh, wow, they've been doing this a lot longer than they've been telling us. And not you guys, but the whole world has been consuming this, not knowing it was being created in a very similar fashion. Not just autotune. You're 100% right, Daniel, when you brought up autotune. I remember being in the studios when that came around. But even a little bit after that, they were literally creating songs. Like you would say, write a pop song that sounds like Britney Spears, add 2 bridges instead of 1, and they would pop up the song, and then all of a sudden the singer would just sing on it. But a lot of people consume that garbage to the point you were making earlier, that you can't save everyone on these things. I find I find that people don't realize how much this has been in their life. They're only realizing it now that it's kind of being obviously put in front of you. Now, of course, there's a difference with AI and how it works with video and all of that stuff. But you could see that people eventually got used to it, and they actually prefer those songs created that way than the ones that are being created in a basement. Except now, because we're swimming in a sea of mediocrity and everything is mediocre at best, like, let's just be honest. When you do something outside of that norm, it doesn't even have to be all that good. It actually makes it easier for you because you don't have to be a part of the mediocrity, which is like to the point John was talking about, like Daniel and Punchy, your artwork's going to be more valued. I believe that. So when we started the zine stuff, one of the reasons was all the things we've talked about, but it was also this. It was to give someone a physical copy of something to look at. And I think we forgot what that's all about. I mean, Daniel and I talk about records all the time privately, but like holding that vinyl, there's something about it, right?
Yeah.
And then looking at a painting that someone painted, it does something to your brain. Like you see all the little bumps on the paint and all that stuff. Sorry if I jabbered there.
No, you can almost like it's that's why I kept on saying the soul. Like it's an unconscious thing. Like I go to my godparents' house and up their stairs they have a whole bunch of beautiful icons. But there's this one hand-painted one of Saint Sophrony.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like I stare at that and like I it's indescribable.
Yeah.
Like I don't have words for it. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And it's so moving. And like I knew right then, I'm like, oh, this was actually hand painted. Like this isn't like printed icon. Like this is like, you know, not to mention Saint Sophrony's a beautiful saint, right? But like a beautiful hand painted icon, like it does something to you. And I think that's like I didn't have the language for that pre my conversion, but it's something that affects your soul. Like, and I can't explain it. And I don't have words for it, but like when you see a beautiful hand painted icon of a saint, like that's it. There's nothing more beautiful than that, in my opinion. Like you can't top that.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning that, you know, prior to, I don't know, 100 years ago, like every icon was hand painted.
That's
And
it.
people had like, you know, I've got 6 here and 1 over there, 2 there, you know, 20 in the, like we're inundated with these images now. And I'm not complaining, but it is worth noting that, you know, 200 years ago and prior, every single icon was hand painted.
That's a beautiful
And
point. And there were
It
more
changes how you
spiritual
interact
qualities.
with it.
Yeah.
You know, the icon catalogs, the icon Christmas cards, they're everywhere. We just slap them on everything, which is a real pet peeve of mine. Like, and we're forgetting like how special and how holy each one was. Again, that icon that you have a print of is somewhere in the world. Like it's not theoretical. Like it's sitting in a church or someone's home somewhere.
You know, I know some people defend and some people complain about some of the memes of icons and like flashing lights and techno music and stuff like that. What do you guys think of that stuff? Do you think that that's sacrilege? Do you think we should probably not, you know, engage with that stuff, or should we not make a big deal out of it? What do you guys think of that?
You're trying to get us in trouble.
I
have a strong opinion on this for sure.
Consistent with everything we're saying, you know.
Hey, I'm just kidding. I was totally kidding. I clearly avoid those things. I don't mean I avoid looking at them or like my friends if they do them. I'm not judging them. I understand what most of them are doing. Like sometimes it's a bit much, but I avoid those.
Are you talking about those like the schizo edits that have like icons?
They're called schizo edits, yeah,
the ones and the actual schizo edits, not like the ones where it's like like some like monastery page, some other pages they'll like have like a story or something, then it has like pictures of the icons. But you mean like the actual like schizo edits, basically, right? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, like the like those, like
yeah. Those are, I mean, it's like, listen, they'll call them schizo edits because they're, you know, because they're holy, I guess, you know. But at the same time, it's also like, I don't know, like I'm sure that the people that are doing that aren't necessarily trying to be sacrilegious, but it's like, just chill out, dude. You know what I mean? Just like, if you'd use something else, probably just as easy for those things. You wouldn't even be able to make a difference. You could probably put like Nickelodeon characters in there and it would get the same exact point across. All right. So I don't understand why they always put, the ones that do put icons in there. I don't know why they do, but it's.
Well, to Christina's point, you got to protect the sacred. Like things belong in a certain place, right? So I can understand the intention of taking something sacred and doing a quote unquote schizo edit, but like really like, you know, the sacred should be for the sacred, and something consumed in that way should not be using sacred things to do that. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
Like everything.
What's that? It's that old.
Time.
What is it? Rex orandi, Rex revendi, Rex credendi. I think is I totally butchered that, but you know what I'm talking about, right? The law of prayer. You know what I'm talking about, Mella, right?
No one knows what you're talking about.
Like, no. It's lex orandi, lex vivendi, lex credendi. The law of prayer is the law of worship, is the law of something else. Someone in the chat, back me up on this. Okay? I didn't just make this up. All right.
Alithos Anesti.
I can't back you up, Sean. I'm sorry.
No, I've heard that.
I'm gonna look this up. I'm telling you, it's not.
Once you repeated it, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you're talking about. Yeah. Is this the first way that came out? I thought you were literally talking about someone that was online making edits. That's like Saganang or whatever you said. I was like, who is this guy? And then I realized, no, he's being.
Yeah, I do think we want to be careful, and the people that are doing it, I think, as you guys said, I do think they're doing it from a good intention. So I want to be careful about that. But we have a lot of new people in the church who maybe don't know some of the proper etiquette of places you shouldn't stand in church or things you shouldn't do in church, and this where the church meets the world is one place where maybe those of us who know better should be gently letting people know, like, maybe don't do this, because we do want to, like, another big one for me, and forgive me if any of you have done this, but people taking pictures of the gifts especially after they've been consecrated, and posting those online. This is a completely sacred space. It should, in my opinion, should not be online. Like communion pictures like that. We want to, we protect what is holy. We veil it. We literally veil it in church, but we should, to some degree, be veiling it online as well.
Yeah, well, and that's how we protect the tradition, right? Like, one thing here leads to another thing, and it keeps going and going and going. So, 100 years you could see schizo edits in church. It's like, we got to avoid that. Like,
that could be a church thing, like, in our lifetime, dude. In all honesty, it could be like not a church. Hopefully not the Orthodox Church. Was like, that's going to be a thing probably in some Protestant church at some point, And also, Christina, to say to your point, that's why in every liturgy we hear the doors and windows in wisdom let us attend, because literally at a certain point the doors had to be locked in the event of, like, the Romans trying to get in, or someone else trying to get in that wasn't supposed to be there. The catechumens depart back in the day. I mean, some churches still do this. Like, you literally had to leave if you were a catechumen. So,
and people have died defending the gifts.
Yeah.
And we're taking pictures of it and posting it everywhere, And why? What's the, because we want to be doing everything out of love and not out of kind of a showmanship, I think. So we just have to be careful about that.
Amen.
Piety signaling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a thing.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely.
All right, guys. Well, it sounds like we're winding down. I really thank you guys so much for your time and all your thoughts. This was a lot of fun. I hope to have you guys back on a future episode. Hoping to do this, semi-regularly. So I'd love to see you guys back on here. And any parting last words that you guys want to say?
Thanks
Where
for
can we
setting
find
this
you
up.
guys?
This
If someone wanted to connect with you further, where could anyone find you, Mano or Christina?
The study of stuff. We'll leave it at that, or borednomore.net.
Yeah, and I'm at Orthodox Family Life, and my birthday was on Holy Monday, and I was just monetized. So
hey,
be
happy
looking out.
birthday!
Oh, happy birthday!
Yeah, happy birthday!
And
congratulations!
And I'm offering
We will not
membership
sing happy birthday to you very awkwardly. I promise you.
That's great. That's great. And Mella, thanks for setting this up. This was great. Actually, I really enjoyed this conversation. It was pretty cool. It was pretty cool.
I thoroughly enjoyed all of you, and thanks for putting up with, like I said, not a lot of art knowledge here, but I really enjoyed hearing everyone's take.
Hey, I'm sorry for dragging you guys down the hill for a little bit, but I feel like it's necessary to look at that stuff, especially because Father Seraphim Rose, pretty much in every lecture he gives in the Orthodox Survival Course, he has a little section on the art, and I like looking at that stuff. I think it's really fascinating to see how all these things crept into the culture, and I thought, I just thought it'd be fun to kind of deep dive into that stuff with you guys. And how about you, Punchy? Where can we find you?
can find me on my Instagram, Punchy1art, or you can send me a telepathic message. Good luck.
Punchy, are you gonna keep making art? Is that why you kind of like this up to take the Instagram account?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. That's good.
Awesome.
That's good.
Awesome.
Daniel, any last words?
Just my name at Instagram. That's where you can find me.
Awesome. All right, guys. Christ is risen. Enjoy your Apostle celebrations, because I know we're still doing that. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys soon. And take care, everyone in the chat. Thank you guys so much for joining. And see you all next time. Bye-bye.
Take it easy, guys. Adios. Bye-bye.
Bye.